Good day, strategy gamers, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Play Downfall Conquest of the Third Reich by GMT Games. In this episode, we're going to be taking the initiative turn for the Western Allies, and if we have enough time, we'll try to squeeze in an OKW turn as well. So to begin, we see that the current weather is already ahead of our marker, so no action needed there, but we are going to hop over to the action track and see what orders are available for us to select as the Western Allies. So of course, first we'll move all of the orders down on the action track, and then we'll draw randomly from our lovely coffee cup what the new order is. And this is a strategic warfare or attack order for the OKW faction. So that might be interesting for the OKW faction when we get there. At the very bottom of the track, we have a redeploy 5 order for infantry, armor, and naval for Western Allies. We also have a redeploy 3 and attack 2 order just above it, and then we have a command HQ order, which would be a bit of a wild card for us in the middle. Really probably don't want to pay the extra initiative costs for going above the first option available here, and frankly I think the redeploy option makes the most sense, as we do want to start to take some of those reinforcements we had in previous initiative phases with the Western Allies. We want to start getting them into theater. We want to start getting them to face some combat and make an impact. So we're going to go ahead and take the redeploy 5 order off of the track, and that's what we will do. I'll adjust the initiative track in just a second. This will put us on top of the OKW player. And you can see just to the right of the frame, the United States. Those are going to be the 2 units that I think will move as well. We do have 2 detachments, a British and a Canadian detachment in the United Kingdom box. But I think we'll probably keep those there as part of the build-up for the invasion Northern Europe operation. I don't know, since that, the Africa Corps evacuated North Africa, that we really need to send additional steps to North Africa. And as a reminder, in port-to-port movement, you do have a hard limit of 6 steps moving port-to-port in one turn. So we're going to take these 2 units, this 4-strength 5th U.S. Infantry, and this Armor U.S. Detachment, 1 strength. We're going to move those to Algiers. Now, of course, to do that, we have to satisfy a naval interception in the North Atlantic. And we have right now in the Western Allies a strength of 8, and the OKW faction has a strength of 6. However, when we look at the Battle of the Atlantic strategic warfare box, we do incur a -2 DRM in the North Atlantic here. So we're actually flush. It's 8 and 8 in terms of strength between the 2 forces. So the interception check itself is not going to result in any type of initiative loss for this movement. And of course, we're moving through the North Atlantic box, and off map we're moving into the Western Mediterranean. And there's nothing to do in the Western Mediterranean, as the Italians don't have any fleet presence there. So the OKW player can choose to do a sea attack option, and I think they will take that liberty. And because we're at 8 and 8 in strength, there's not going to be any DRM from that. We are moving more than 2 combat steps, so there's a +1 DRM for that. And I don't believe any of our cards give us an interceptor bonus. So the OKW faction is going to get a +1 DRM on a 2 die roll, and we'll look real quick here at the results table. So really, they need a 5 or higher, or excuse me, a 3 or higher to avoid taking a hit, and anything else they'll incur a hit to the Western Allies. So it's not the greatest odds of doing damage, but the risk is relatively low as well. So let's get some dice and camera here, and we'll roll to see that result. Oh, they rolled very well. So an 11 turns to a 12, which means the defender takes 2 hits. Now the defender, who is the Western Allies, they can choose to take those 2 hits by interdicting the naval assets that they have in the North Atlantic, or they can choose to take those steps by step losses of the forces that they just convoyed to North Africa. Considering that, at present, it's probably going to be a while until we have more forces that need to go from the United States to North Africa, or even from United Kingdom to North Africa, I think I'm going to opt to take those hits, the interdicted hits, with the fleet units instead of the strength off of the land combat units. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Though that might have supply implications, but we just had a supply check. So we're going to gamble a little, because I think when we do get to the next supply, we'll be able to have those fleets recovered by then. But that is something that you want to be mindful of, that you don't want to weaken your naval forces too much, because when supply does pop up, you can take some pretty significant initiative hits from that trace supply. So that's all the movement from the United States. I'm just going to real quick refocus the camera on North Africa so we can see the situation there. And then we'll have 2 quick moves to conduct as well in North Africa. So the first move that we have in North Africa is on the bottom left of the screen, the 8th British Motorized. We're going to move up next to Tripoli, and we'll stop there. Of course, we can't conduct an attack because this was only a redeploy order. In the very top of the screen, we have in Algiers our reinforcements from the United States. When doing the port-to-port movement, that expends all movement points, so they are done for the turn. However, the first British, we will actually move up to be next to Tunis. Can't believe I forgot that for a second. So that should be the end of all of our Western Ally movement phase. And with that, we will go over to the OKW player as we have no pending event. So we'll hop back to the action track and see what's available to them. So this is the current state of the order track. We're going to go ahead and move all the orders down so we can fill in a new order that'll be available to the OKW faction. Let's see here. And we got a Soviet recruit mechanized order. They will be thankful for that, I know. So looking at it, the OKW player could do a recruit action. I feel like we've had a decent amount of recruits. The Africa Corps is down to 2 steps, and 5th Panzer is down to 2 steps. So, I mean, it's not a bad idea. It has a pretty heavy initiative cost, though, to use the recruit option. So that's a little less interesting. Yeah, a total of 21 for recruit or 12 for mechanize. So that's not great. We also have these move in attack and an attack order that's available here. When we look in the back, we have strategic warfare on both of these. I don't think there's nothing on the back of that. So that makes it a little tough. I feel like the Western Allies, we clearly have evacuated North Africa. That makes sense. That lines up with our plans. But that doesn't mean that we just want to be a pushover in the Mediterranean entirely. Our fleets, the Italian fleets, took some pretty heavy interdiction hits when evacuating Africa Corps. But we do have the strategic warfare track for Siege of Malta and Battle of North Atlantic there. We can try to slow the Allies down a little. So I think what we might do then is we'll take this order for a strategic warfare. Now this unfortunately does have a cost of 18 plus 1 is going to make it 19 on the initiative track. So that's a pretty hefty cost, and it will take us past a pending event marker. But I think that's what we're going to end up doing is the strategic warfare. And I think we're going to do that on Siege of Malta. So real quick, I'm just going to reposition the camera there. So when the Western Allies use the strategic warfare order, they they get a transport point that's tracked on the track to the left of the camera there. When the OKW player does strategic warfare, they don't get that step. They just immediately go towards trying to influence one of the strategic warfare boxes. And in this case, we chose Siege of Malta. There's a little indication on the graphic of a dice roll 5. This is one area, actually, now that I have gotten in the game, I think maybe it's a small little UI improvement they could have made. You need a 5 or higher to be successful, but it's not quite as simple as that. If you roll a 10, 11, or 12 during the strategic warfare roll, you can actually shift the track by 2 in either direction on the tracker here. So if we rolled an 11, we could actually move all the way over to axis advantage. So it's not just a 5 that we need to get. And my thought is, it's unlikely that we roll a 10 or higher. Statistically, it's not the most common result, but it's possible. If we do, we unlock that Italian fleet and get that DRM for naval strength. And if we don't, we're pretty likely to get a 5 or higher. And we have another order on the track that we could also use. So in theory, we could take this order twice in a row and probably end up unlocking that Italian fleet, which would be very beneficial towards the overall, halting of the Western Allies in the Mediterranean. So we're going to go ahead, stop babbling, and roll these 2 dice and see what we get. A 7, so the most statistically likely outcome. It doesn't move at 2, but it does move 1. So now we have a DRM in our favor, and we are one step closer to having axis advantage and unlocking that Italian fleet. So that would be very useful, and we'll probably take strategic warfare next time around, unless circumstances perhaps change for us. So that's the end of the order phase. The observant among you may have noted that we did not resolve progressing the current weather marker. So I'm actually going to hop back to the initiative track, and we're going to resolve that real quick before we move on to the event step of this turn, as we will pass an event pending stage. But the weather would not have changed anything with our decision making or the strategic warfare track here. But we will hop back up to the initiative track to resolve for that error. So I've moved up the weather marker to where the OKW initiative marker was. We'll now roll 2 die to see how far it moves forward. That's a 5. So it's going to round the corner and go up to 66. This does take us to a new weather phase. So I will also mark that on the turn track, just to note that we're now in weather phase. This is 3, I believe? Yeah, 3. So making some progress there against the turn. As a reminder, when we get to the end with the weather marker, it then does start to cycle to a new turn. So that'll be important. And we're going to now hop back over to the event cards, as we do have, as you can see, a pending event for the OKW faction. So for the event procedure, the very first thing we're going to do is take the current event card and move it to the discard. And then the revealed card from pending, we're going to make our current event. We also remove air units on the map to match what's currently showing. So the OKH player is actually going to lose their air that they have on the east front. And other than that, there's nothing on the board right now. And we're going to resolve this current event that we now have. In short, the Cards United Nations, if we had a ton of partisans as the Western Allies, there's a win condition for us. Otherwise, whichever faction has more objectives than the other, they draw an action card. But right now, in terms of objectives, we're tied 3 each. So there's really no effect to any of this for the current event. We'll now reveal the top card in the pending event. So this is Arsenal of Democracy. So I'm not going to make the same mistake I've made in one or two videos now. We're not going to resolve this, but just so we know what's coming later, when this becomes a current event, the Soviets will get one armored reinforcement, and the Western's allies get one armor or one infantry. And what's also notable is that as long as this card is face up, the Western allies add one to each of their rolls. So that's pretty powerful. We now make sure that we draw the action cards on the pending event, and in this case it's 2 for the Western allies. So we'll just show these here real quick. So this is strategic movement. Move 1 Western unit any distance using only sea areas and friendly rail lines. Well, that would have been useful this last turn. The unit can't enter Izak during the move. It may leave. The move may be subject to naval interception, and the unit can't move again in this order. Okay. Still, useful card. The second action card is Armored Infantry. So it's just a modifier for a Western unit combat in fall and snow. So that's useful. We'll add these to our hand of action cards, which are growing. And we add air units now to match what's on the card. So we've gone a complete 180 here. Now the Western allies actually get 2 different air units that they get to place on the map. So it's going to be off camera here for the sake of time, but I'm going to add one just outside of Tripoli on the 8th British. And then we will also add one on the 1st British that we have near Tunis, just to make sure we have air superiority cover for any future combat that we see there. And we'll flip the initiative marker, and that resolves this event procedure. Next, I think we will try to squeeze in another Western Ally turn in this episode. So I'll hop back to the action track for us to look at orders available to the Western Allies. All right, so at present, there's a redeploy and an attack order on the track for the Western Allies. There's also a headquarter order on the track. We'll move everything down 1 and draw 1 more to put on the top. And what do we get here? We get a recruit or mechanize order. It's actually pretty good. I'm glad we drew that. So I think what we're going to do is actually, because we want to start making some progress in North Africa, I'd really like to try to take Tripoli. I don't know that we'll get Tunis this turn, but Tripoli I think is doable. The difficulty with the redeploy and attack order on the order track is that it's for unit types that we don't currently have available. So really most of what we brought, the bulk of the forces that we brought in with the 5th US are infantry, and that particular order you can't do anything with that infantry. The 1st British could attack Tunis, but that's just a 1 strength right now, so that's not so great. So I think what we'll do is we have in our planning slot this attack 3 order for infantry and armor. So I think we will go ahead and use that order. I'll adjust the initiative cost appropriately for that off camera. And we'll zoom in now to the battle for Tripoli and see how that goes. All right, let the battle for Tripoli commence. To begin with, we're attacking with the 8th British, so that has a strength of 3. We don't have any flanking units. There's no armor involved. We do have a Western combat unit, though, so that's +1 strength, so we're up to 4. And when we look at the defender, they have a strength of 1, bringing us back to 3. But Tripoli is actually not a city, and there's no other terrain that we're crossing. So we are going to be on the +3 land combat table. And we have some DRMs to apply. So from the pending card that we just got, we actually get a +1 DRM from that as the Western Allies. The weather in Libya and Egypt is always fair. I realize now that I said fall when we had flipped over that other action card, but fair is the correct translation of that symbol. So there's no penalty for the weather, and air superiority in fair is a +2 DRM, bringing our DRM to +3. So we have a +3 DRM and a +3 column that we're going to be attacking on. We'll get some dice in frame here, and we'll roll to see how this combat goes. So that's a 4. So that's really not that great. A 4 with our DRM brings us to a 7. And on the +3 table, that brings us to a attacker 1 loss, defender 2 losses. So because this is a 1 strength unit, and half of the losses, up to half the losses can be solved with retreats, it's still going to have to lose the 1 strength. So that Italian garrison unit is no more. And the 8th British will take 1 hit, but we will move it into Tripoli. And then I will also mark that we now have on the objective track the Tripoli objective, which gives us an advantage of 1 in terms of objective count. So that's a positive for us. I think I'm probably just going to end the episode here, and just want to say thanks everyone for the support of the videos. Any questions or comments, please leave them below. Excited to keep this game going and hope you've been enjoying it through the series. With that, strategy gamers, hoping you have yourselves an excellent day. Bye now.